Did you ever have that friend that you thought you knew everything about? That friend you'd known since diapers. You were inseparable. But life happened, and you lost track of them. It's been years since you've seen them, so you decide to track them down, only to find out that your friend is gone. Maybe they've moved to a different place to start fresh. Maybe they've died. Maybe they've turned into the kind of person you think is a monster. Or maybe, just maybe, they were that monster all along. You never knew them at all. Did you ever have that kind of friend? Because Peter Parker does. Before Spectacular Spider-Man, before the Raimi films... No, after that. There was Brian Michael Bendis' greatest work, the Ultimate Spider-Man comic series. It was a fresh take on the Spider-Man mythos, starting with a young Peter Parker still in high school. 5 years into the comic series, Peter has faced down businessmen that turn themselves into monsters, scientists with mechanical arms, showmen, and schemers. Not to mention having dealt a blow to Wilson Fisk, the kingpin of crime. All within months of getting his powers. And then, he finds the suit. Cool, now I can read the script. He had tracked down his childhood friend, Eddie Brock Jr., son of the man who had helped Peter's own father in his research. Eddie shows him what's left of their father's work, a beaker of black ooze that was supposed to be a kind of self-forming suit that could use the body's natural processes to heal the host. Due to comic book shenanigans, Peter ended up stealing the suit, thinking he could finish what his father started, only for the suit to begin having an effect on him. It enhanced his emotions and even began eating him alive. He nearly died, and when he came to destroy the remains of the suit, Eddie was there. Peter destroyed what he knew of, but Eddie had more hidden away. In anger, he put it on himself and tracked down Peter back to his school. And that's where we pick up in 2005 with the Ultimate Spider-Man video game. I know that was a little long, but I think you guys deserve a little bit of lead up into this game, because for a while, this game was essentially canon to the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. They did introduce some elements into the comics down the line that unfortunately de-canonized it, but that doesn't change how big this game was for the people keeping up with the comics at the time. I've dragged this on long enough though. Without further ado, let's break down the game that started my love for Spider-Man and is therefore responsible for the creation of this series in the first place, Ultimate Spider-Man.
Hello there, this is Bob Masters, beginning a video on the amazing Ultimate Spider-Man,
Story. The game opens with a little narration from Peter, breaking down the events of the comics up to this point and focusing on him acquiring the suit and Eddie's reaction. Kind of like I did a minute ago. Guess I jumped the gun a bit. Oops. Getting into the actual game, it kicks off right in the middle of a boss fight. You have to tie the dots, idioms are not my strong suit, between the cutscene showing you Peter's experience with Eddie and the suit and how it leads to here. Not really that hard when there's a giant purple monster swiping at your face like my ex-girlfriend. Please, Janet, give me back my copy of the greatest game of all time, The Chronicles of Narnia for the GBA. It wasn't my fault. Peter Man isn't wearing his costume and doesn't have his webs, so Peter jumps away from the field and leads Eddie across Queens, finding an exposed wire sparking in the rain.
Ooh, how convenient!
Before you can make a move, Venom gives this game a mature rating by voring this teenager in public. That's a sentence I just put on the internet. Jokes aside, I really like these strength minigames throughout the game. They make you feel like you really need to be spamming those triggers as fast as possible. And I was playing this game as a 6 or 7 year old on those big ass classic Xbox controllers. I could barely reach the triggers. You can't just go gung-ho though, because some of the minigames have very specific sweet spots that aren't always at the top. Great mechanic really reminds me of the button mash from Metal Gear Solid 4, where you pull Snake through the microwave hallway. My ADHD is taking the lead on this script, I'm sorry. In the Ultimate Universe, the symbiote is actually vulnerable to electricity rather than heat and sound like the mainline universe. So if you lead Venom over that exposed wire I mentioned 2 paragraphs ago, he goes down pretty quick. We don't actually see what happens to him because the cutscene fades to black while Venom's getting shocked.
Ooh, how can...
So instead, we cut to a full 3 months later, in a universe where the events of Peter getting his powers to his death happens within a year? Yeah, totally. And Peter's talking to MJ. These are pretty much the only two characters we see on Peter's side of things. It kinda sucks because the Ultimate comic line was as good as it was purely because of the dialogue and character interactions. That said, it was 2005, and I doubt that we were going to be seeing Peter and Kenny Kong talking after class at any point in this game, and seeing him with MJ is nice enough. They have a good relationship, at least at this point, even though they split up and get back together constantly in the comic run, and MJ even gets to tease him for ripping a hole in the butt of his suit. Classy, Peter. So he runs home to collect his web shooters, and what do we hear on the police scanner but an attempted robbery by one Herman Schultz. What is it with this guy sticking his nose into almost every Spider-Man game? We can't go fight him in our nerd clothes though, so we swing by
the place
and get back our costume. Thankfully, she's fixed our butthole, Peter's words, not mine. Now that we're looking all snazzy, we go literally down the street and this dorky looking so-and-so is in a police standoff. I'm gonna let this cutscene play out for you to really show off how good the dialogue is in this game.
Out of the way, Piglet! All of you, just back off!
I never knew your name was Herman.
Oh no, it's you!
Well, you are kind of in my neighborhood, Herman.
See what I mean? I'll probably do that a few more times throughout the video, so buckle up. The guy isn't worth dirtying the costume we just got fixed, so we web up his vibro gauntlets and leave him for the cops to pick up. Maybe next time he can afford some better glasses. The game takes us through the rest of another day in this Spider-Man's life, with a group of thugs we quickly put into full body casts, and we get to learn about one of my favorite little mechanics in this game. After knocking out an average enemy, you actually need to web them to the ground for them to stay down. Not only is this great for a Spidey that's really new to the gig, but it's that slight bit more realistic, since knocking someone out doesn't just leave them on the ground for the next few hours, it normally only lasts a couple of minutes in real life. We can talk more about that later. Not only does this whole section expertly take you through learning the movement, webs, and transition into combat, but it also does some expert character building, giving us a good sense of Peter's sense of humor, showing his relationship with MJ, his banter with his villains, and even how the people of New York react to him with this chick.
You okay?
Get away from me, you freak.
It's a fantastic opening to the game that really pulls you into the world they're creating. It's so grounded and familiar, but Treyarch didn't want this to just be Spider-Man's world. This is a story told in the Ultimate Marvel universe, and they took that very seriously. So we swing on over to Midtown High, Peter's school, and who's waiting on the top of the building but Johnny Storm himself.
Yo, 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 Spidey! Johnny Storm of the world-famous Fantastic Four. What on earth are you doing in Queens?
What, I can't be in Queens?
I have to be here, but you? Go save the world.
You two have some playful banter every time they meet, but this is the only time you need to raise Johnny in the main story. So take it in while you can.
Now I own you!
Yeah, whatever.
He's gonna live in Peter's house and date Peter's clone one day. All of that is still fairly familiar though. It's still a Spider-Man game. You swing around, make jokes, stop the bad guys, and do chases. Why does every game have the chases? But that isn't all this game brings to the table. All of that is just a little domestic. We need something alien. Ultimate Spider-Man is one of the two Spidey games where you get to play as Venom. And the other one is this.
I want more of them.
Yeah, I think I'll stick with Ultimate. Because hot damn is this fun. Look at this. Oh, and you know that really annoying balloon kid from Spider-Man 2? Yeah, that's what you get, you little shit. Warning, we at the Pocket Monster Within do not condone child violence. We also do get a flashback to the very beginning of the game, where Peter fought Venom in the street, and we see that a certain Adrian Toombs was watching from the laundromat.
Ooh, how convenient!
We don't get to hear who he's calling, but given we saw this man in the opening cutscene, I think it's fair to assume he isn't calling Pizza Hut to place a delivery.
I saw the suit.
I don't have a better place to put this in the review, so here, he pronounces suit wrong. It bugs me a lot, but let's move on. I mentioned that this game makes an effort to establish itself in the greater Marvel universe, but that doesn't just extend to Spider-Man.
Nice mess. You don't say.
Could you imagine them recreating this scene in a few years? I mean, we're getting a new version of Venom in Insomniac's Spider-Man 2, and a new Wolverine game by the same company. I would give anything to see these two luck claws again. Venom doesn't fuck around. This story tends to move pretty quickly, switching between Spider-Man and Venom every other mission or so. Between each mission, it has a system pretty similar to Spider-Man 2, where you have to do certain activities between missions. No, nothing like that. Ever again. That theme song is permanently stuck in my head on loop. No, in this game there's 4 objectives that update between missions. Those are always tokens collected, race medals earned, combat tours beaten, and city events completed. Between each mission, 1 or 2 will be added to each of the categories. Except for tokens, I don't think you have to collect any to progress. And it hardly ever takes more than a few minutes to beat every requirement. I definitely like this better than the point system of Spider-Man 2. While that game allowed for more freedom, this one helps the story flow much more naturally. Also, the mission beacons don't really have timers or proximity activation like in Spider-Man 2, so you can do them much more at your leisure. It's that little change that led to me not beating the game until like 5 years after I got it. I was much more content swinging around and beating up thugs than I was moving on to the next story mission. Speaking of which, the next day while Peter's at school, MJ hears a news bulletin about a giant rhinoceros on the loose. Because, of course it is. This mission is unironically my favorite in the game. The art is just fucking on point, and the flow of the mission is perfect. This mission really does exemplify the world of the Ultimate Comics brought to the screen. At first, we follow a path of destruction through Queens, with looters taking advantage of the chaos that we quickly put a stop to. Also, this guy here
You're stealing from me. This is my store.
has stayed in my head rent-free for 20 years, and I couldn't tell you why.
Oh, great. Now you're going to steal my stuff.
Well, actually, I was saving your life. I think the words you're looking for were, thank you?
Once we finally catch up with the living wrecking ball, we get this amazing scene.
Hey, you! Is that a rhinoceros horn, or you just happy to see? I'm so scared I can't even finish my lame joke.
Sean Marquette's performance here and the slow burn of the scene is absolutely fantastic. Not to mention the way he gets hit so hard he goes back through the comic panels to where he first showed up. I'm trying not to gush over the style of this game too much, because it'll get its chance later in the video, but it's just so well put through the game that it's hard not to talk about it. Of course, the Rhino isn't just here to look pretty, so he takes off and it's up to us to go after him. The Johnny Storm thing was just a race. This is the game's first real chase scene. And actually, I'm not as critical of these as I was for the other games. The thing that really got me about those was that they were just so dull. In the 2 PS1 games, and to a lesser extent the first movie tie-in, you were just following behind the subject of the chase with no real obstacles. But the difference was that those games were a lot harder. Unfortunately for Spider-Man 2, the chases in that game, mainly the Black Cat missions, were almost unbearable. Nothing happens the whole time, and you're faster than the person you're chasing, so you're kind of just wasting 5+ minutes doing nothing. Thankfully, the Ultimate Spider-Man game knew how to fix that problem. Take the Rhino chase, for example. As soon as the cutscene's over, Rhino busts through a wall and helps a person make their meeting on time without needing to wait for the elevator. We naturally have to go bring them back down to Earth, and around the corner, some muggers are holding up the police, and against my better judgment, I help them. My point is that through this entire level, even before Rhino shows up, it feels like things are actually happening more than there just being a villain for us to chase. There's people using the violence to their advantage and others in danger that we have to help. This is the exact problem that I had with Spider-Man 2 dealt with. Not to mention, look at Spider-Man 2's Rhino. Now compare it to this hulking beast. Yeah, this isn't really a contest. I feel like one is going to take someone's lunch money and one is going to throw a car at me, which he does. Repeatedly. Before that, though, we find Rhino at a construction site. I think an idea might be forming here. We annoy Rhino until he manages to get his hand stuck in the concrete temporarily and drop this wrecking ball on his shiny metal ass. Cool, we broke through his armor. Now, what was that about throwing cars at me? The boss fight itself was entertaining enough. We kind of just jump around Rhino until he tuckers himself out, then get in there and do some damage. I almost feel bad for him. A human stick in red and blue underwear just broke what I'm sure was a very expensive suit. But Alex O'Hearn here unintentionally gives us the next big hint towards our plot focus of the game, being the Trask Industries tramp stamp on his foot. And you have a tramp stamp on your foot? Remember in the Spider-Man 2 review all the talk I had about Mecha Biocon? Well, Trask Industries is the real version of that present in this game. For now, Peter recognizes the name, but can't remember from where, so he moves on, leaving good old Alex for the police. I can't really figure out a good way to put in the end of that cutscene, so, Eddie's here too. You know what that means, right? We take Eddie on another rager of a night that I'm sure will leave a few headaches and corpses, this time with this Bagley-inspired insult to biology and organ placement, Silver Sablinova, or Silver Sable. Fun fact about her is that she didn't actually make her first appearance in the Ultimate Comics until November of 2005, with this game coming out in April, meaning this was actually the Ultimate version's debut. I don't know, but I think I like this design a little more than what we ended up with in continuity. Oh, did you want me to talk about the level? What do you want me to say? We kicked a bunch of merc asses and left like a boss. Moving on. This game, unlike Spider-Man 2, moves at kind of a breakneck pace, so transitioning between these levels is kind of difficult. I mean, you just do more city goals and boom, Peter has a field trip. What is this place? ESAM? I guess an art museum? Who really cares? You guys are here to see some punchy. It's also kind of hard to find too much detail in some of these missions to talk about. We see Peter still has his headaches when he's near Eddie, which they don't entirely explain. It could be a spider sense going into overdrive, or it could be a slightly different cause that I'll explain later, but Peter dons his costume and steps up to the roof to get some air, only to find that Brock is waiting for him. I don't blame Peter for being surprised at this. I'd be pretty shocked if the guy I electrocuted to death 3 months ago showed up on a school trip. Even more so if that same guy tried to eat me. Again, this is the first real fight between Venom and Spider-Man, since before you didn't have your webs or anything, which is why I'm a little disappointed that literally nothing's different. Due to the setting, you don't really get to use your webs, you just kinda jump around him and land hits where you can. It's cool, don't get me wrong, but it really starts to show that all the boss fights in this game feel a little similar. Sure, you get the odd Rhino fight thrown in that changes what you need to do, but for the most part, it's just jumping around your enemy, then when you see a gap, you punch him for a bit. So once you've knocked Eddie around, Peter sends him flying off the top of the museum before Eddie gets a sucker punch in. Things are looking a little rough for our arachnid adolescent until Eddie gets distracted by something.
Brock, sit.
Sable has her goons try and apprehend Venom again, but when it's clear that there's a reason they don't get names in the game, Sable uses this ridiculously overpowered gun that one-shots Venom with an electrical burst. Why do we never see this gun do that much to Venom again? Beats me, but it looks cool as hell. Peter's angry. I did that by accident. Peter's angry that they just showed up and now they're taking away Eddie, but he is a child, so Sable leaves. Next, instead of another story mission, we just get a short cutscene with MJ and Peter in his basement, with Peter explaining what the suit is. He takes a blood sample and realizes that there's still trace elements of the suit in his blood. Neat. Moving on. Eddie wakes up in an energy cell with two men looking in at him. We've seen them before. The guy with the mustache was the wrong person that Peter and Eddie's father signed the suit over to in the opening cutscene of the game, and the bald man is the one who witnessed Peter fighting Eddie 3 months ago. They are Adrian Toombs and Bolivar Trask. Not in that order. Moving on from how cruel his parents must have been to have named him Bolivar, he tells Eddie that they want to test the suit for military contracting and won't take no for an answer. Not that he really puts up much of a fight, so naturally Brock is brought into the city for another chase mission. As good as the Spider-Man chases are, this one isn't my cup of tea. For the same reason that I wasn't a fan of the races in Spider-Man 2. In this mission, you chase Electro through the whole of Manhattan, and as a kid, I used to think you could hit him with cars and stuff to damage him early, but you can't really do much of anything. You're just following him around until you get to a predetermined spot on the map. I'll say it's a little better than the races in Spider-Man 2 because you can't get too close, so there's the most minor amount of challenge, but it's still just you following a guy for a few minutes, and if you mess up, you have to start from the very beginning, so I suggest that you don't. Electro leads you through the streets, up and across buildings, all the way to Times Square, where Peter decides to butt his webbed head into the fight since he was at his job in the Daily Bugle, and promptly gets his shit smacked in by Electro. So once again, looks like Spidey's goose is cooked, until Venom literally calls dibs.
Alright, let's finish this up. Fine. Like hell!
Admittedly, after the lackluster chase, this is one of my favorite parts in the game. You as Venom throw cars at Electro in an attempt to stun him, then unload on him. Normally by slamming him face first into the pavement. All while he tries to not only kill you, but slowly, and I do mean slowly, fry the unconscious Spider-Man in the center of Times Square. It's not an especially hard fight, but the first time you go through it, or every time for me because I forget, you get a nasty surprise when you get Electro below a certain health. He'll fly up to one of the many illuminated signs in the square and use it to not only heal, but to give himself a massive power boost temporarily. He can do this once per every sign in the area, so unless you want to spend the next 5 years smacking him again and 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 again, I would suggest you jump up and break all the signs before he has the chance to use them. Once you've grounded the other supervillain, get it? Grounded? Venom moves to take Spider-Man for himself before S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives and chases him off. And Spidey is the king of being saved by circumstance. Nicholas Fury is here to protect his Spider-Son. I'm only slightly kidding with how he treats Peter in the comics, and comes out blasting. Not that he lands a shot. I'm sorry, you said that to the person without depth perception?
Yeah, why do you have the gun?
Jokes aside, I love this extra step of world building. Introducing S.H.I.E.L.D. at what I'd say is the end of the first act of the game feels really good. We get to see that Peter isn't really too fond of Fury or his secret spy team. We get to see how almost normalized S.H.I.E.L.D. is here because they fly in, secure the situation, and no one ever brings it up again. So Norman Osborn. I get why they included him in this game, since he's such a unique and fun villain, and I'm glad they did, so we get to see him, if only for a little bit, but God, is he wasted here. In the Ultimate Comics up to this point, the Green Goblin had appeared in 2 volumes out of 6. The first was in Volume 1. Osborn creates Spider-Man through an accident involving a genetically altered Spider-Man. He then tries to recreate the accident on himself and turns himself into the Green Goblin. He kills his wife and shows up the next day at Peter's school, with both Peter and Harry Osborn believing that the Goblin is here to kill them. Peter stops him and he falls into the East River. So not only did he create Spider-Man, but he mentally traumatized him and was Peter's first villain. The second was Volume 4, where Norman returns and turns Peter's life upside down, mainly by telling him to do anything Norman tells him to, or Norman will kill Aunt May and Mary Jane. He psychologically tortures this 15-year-old until Peter beats him into a bloody pulp. Once again on a bridge, it feels like a reference to something. S.H.I.E.L.D. takes him into custody, and that's the end of that until way further down the line in the comics. Goblin earns his place very quickly as Spidey's main bad guy. So, why in this game does he show up 200 miles off the coast of the US on what looks like an oil barge in the background while this Beetle guy tears everyone apart? He shows up again later, and I'll explain more then, but having someone else show up and pick up the biggest bad in Peter Parker's life like he's an Uber Eats meal is a little demeaning. Especially because if you cut this scene out, it removes any ties between the two characters at all. They never interact, the Beetle never has any impact on Osborn's abilities, or really his presence at all. It's just so out of left field. Fury and Sharon Carter, who only ever appears in this game and like 2 issues of the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, on the scene afterwards, discussing that the Beetle was there for Osborn, but nothing really comes out of it. They talk about alerting Peter that his greatest threat is on the loose again, but that they shouldn't have to if they do their job, and then proceed to never interact with the Beetle again. This is almost the last time S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up in the story, actually. This isn't in the script, I just remembered that. But of course, this isn't a S.H.I.E.L.D. story, it's a Spider-Man story, so let's sling some webs.
Hey! Where'd you get the cool suit? And by cool, I mean cumbersome and riveting. Don't take it too hard. I mean, clearly, as you can see, I'm kind of a costume design snob. Okay, fine. It's a nice suit. Sorry. Jeez.
Okay, this is admittedly another chase that I'm not the most fond of. My biggest problem is that it switches to cutscenes a few times throughout the chase, and the first one is after you jump down from the building you start on. Like, you could have just continued the initial cutscene by a few more seconds instead. Aside from that, though, this chase does continue the trend of having better chases than the last game at least. Throughout the chase, you're dodging laser blasts, bombs, navigating around these force field barriers, and saving citizens, all while trying to keep up with the bad guy. So there's some fun nuance there. You first follow him to a high-rise where he breaks in through a window and steals a vial labeled Sandman. Yeah, it bothers me that the name is separated too, but I have a little confession. As a kid, I totally misunderstood this scene. Now I recognize that he's gathering samples, that's why he got Osborn. Even if that whole thing is still kinda dumb, it's why he gets this vial, and is the basis behind his later confrontation with Venom. As a kid though, I didn't get that, and assumed that this was the Beetle's lab, and that the vial somehow powered up his weapons with sand stuff, since he loads it into that slot on his arm. It wasn't until I replayed the game in 2017 that I realized how much that made no sense. I don't know why I told you that, so we're moving on. We next chase him to a building under construction, fighting him between the 3 floors, and for some reason, the distance checker is still there. So, if an energy blast knocks you from the building, you can lose by just falling. He just flies back and forth, shooting you with the same stuff he's been shooting you with all night, so it shouldn't be too much of a challenge. He does have this cool AoE attack that doesn't do anything because you normally aren't close enough for him to get hit, and it takes 5 years to charge. You kick his tuchus for a while until he gives up and flies off the building. By the time Peter catches up, he's just gone, with bystanders pointing him to the Latverian embassy, implying he has diplomatic immunity? I'm no political expert, but I'm pretty sure that immunity only goes so far, right? The guy broke an international criminal out of custody from a private facility, broke into a laboratory to steal proprietary property, and given it's Sandman, could it also technically be considered an abduction? Oh, and beating up a teenager, but technically Peter started it, and he also has a secret identity. Look, the point is, he can't just run away and get away with it, so why does he totally just run away and get away with it? Because Peter just leaves, and we catch back up with our good friend Eddie at his new job/imprisonment with Bolivar Trask. Quick question, why does he go back? The whole threat Trask hit him with was that if he didn't cooperate, they'd wait for him to die and then test the suit with someone else. But if he's on the loose, then they have no leverage on him, because he could just eat people on the street. The easiest answer is that Sable caught him again off screen, but if not, it makes this next mission kinda pointless. With Eddie back at Trask's facility, for whatever reason, Toombs asks him why he was more focused on Spider-Man than Electro at Times Square. Eddie mentions his connection to Peter because there aren't enough people in the Ultimate Universe to know Spider-Man's secret identity, and presumably they load Eddie into a transport to go after Parker. It isn't 100% clear if that's what's happening, because while Sable is moving him, Brock intentionally switches into his formal wear and takes Sable out for a day on the town. That is to say, he turns into Venom and tackles her out of the transport down to Manhattan. I wasn't sure if that was clear. Props to Sable here though. Unlike any normal person that would freak out falling hundreds of stories on the pavement, she tells Venom off and shoots him in the fucking mouth. Once you've landed, you find out exactly how kinky this bitch is by whipping her until she has to call her friends. Is that too graphic for a Spider-Man video game review? Her backup arrives and it triggers the next stage of the fight. Not really a chase scene, more like a reverse chase, where the bad guys are coming after you. It isn't too hard at the beginning, a few mercenaries with jeeps and small arms providing you just enough distraction to make you hungry. The longer you go, the harder it gets, with choppers and eventually the same ship Brock was flying in with Sable earlier, showing up to try and stop your rampage. Eventually, though, you destroy the transport, sending Sable into the East River, and she says that while they may have lost Brock, they still have Peter Parker. Speaking of good old Pete, the next cutscene is the most accurate scene to the writing of the comics out of the entire game, so I'm just gonna let the whole thing play out.
Is this for real?
Told you.
Superhero conspiracies?
.com.
It says I'm a deformed mutant.
You're not.
And some doof calling himself Speedball is the coolest thing since the Ultimates?
And this is going to haunt you.
Yes it is.
Keep reading.
Well, some guy named RPB says
That's the one.
that the Latverians have secretly developed a biotactical legion.
Uh-huh.
That sounds a whole lot like the guy that smacked me around last night.
Well, there you go then.
Jeez. The Latverians have some armored goon busting into labs and stealing things. Maybe I should go check it out.
Or we could go to the movies.
Hold on. I have another call.
Rooftop, now.
This is my life.
Kid,
This is a real intrusion.
I need you to back off the Latverian thing.
Why?
Sorry, kid. 18 and older.
What does that mean?
It means I need you to back off.
Yeah, okay, fine. But this is my life. Don't come here.
Thanks, kid.
General, do you think he'll behave?
Knowing Peter Parker the way I do, I'm absolutely sure that he will do the exact opposite of what I just asked him to do.
Of course, the cutscene does continue from there, but you get the idea. He goes back to the Latvian embassy and breaks in, which he didn't do the first time because reasons. Inside is a face that we've been waiting to see for a few missions now, a green, horny face. No, not like that. Here's where my problems with the Green Goblin need to be addressed. I talked earlier about how important Norman Osborn is to the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. He's the man who created Spider-Man. He orchestrated some of the worst events in his life, and eventually, he is the man that will kill Peter Parker. Until he comes back to life, but we're not going to talk about that. And Peter's response to seeing this terrifying threat on the loose...
Great.
We go on a long chase scene through most of Manhattan, swinging after this flaming douchebag as he causes damage and threatens lives that we, of course, have to save. Anytime we stop to save someone, though, he stops and waits, making it clear he's just toying with us until we hit the next stage of the mission. This is tied with the Rhino chase for being the best in the game, genuinely being engaging, but Peter should be having an internal monologue about Goblin being out, or about what he's done in the past. Literally anything. As a kid, I genuinely had no idea who this was, since I hadn't read the comics, and just saw him as another disposable punching bag. I get not wanting him to overshadow the actual bad guys of the game, but if that's the issue, then just leave him out. Around July of this year, it was revealed that there were plans for a sequel to the game back in 2005. There was a video released by Matt McMuscles, another Spider-Man YouTuber that's way better than me, go check him out, where he interviewed Chris Salazar on details about the game. According to that interview, the game would have had a similar gameplay style where you would play as both Spidey and the villain of the game throughout the story. Of course, who else could be that villain but Norman Cornrows Osborn himself? We could have gotten to see all of the damage this man could actually do to Peter Parker, like I've been saying. Not to mention getting to play as him would have been dope as shit. According to Screen Rant, Bendis adjusted the story into Death of a Goblin, being the 19th volume in the series. He did a similar thing with the story to this game, repurposing it into Volume 21, War of the Symbiotes. Given how shitty Volume 21 was, seeing Volume 19 in game form would have been phenomenal. I mean, at least we'll always have Spider-Man Battle for New York, the prequel to this game, where you play as Spider-Man and Green Goblin, with Osborn using the formula to create more goblins. God damn it, we could have gotten that on the main consoles instead of the freaking DS. Moving away from sequels and prequels back to the game we're here to talk about, we finish kicking the shit out of Jolly Green, and Sharon Carter, our lovely S.H.I.E.L.D. liaison, gives us a stern talking to. But her quips are nothing compared to ours, and we leave them to clean up the mess. Look, with all the tampering S.H.I.E.L.D. has done in Peter's life, they deserve to be stuck with the bill. They've got to be good for something. Now, since Peter was able to get into the Latvian embassy without the Beetle getting in the way, we move on to where he was while this was happening. Our good friend Rancor is leaping tall buildings in a single bound, when a familiar bug, no, not that one, shows up and blasts him to the ground. So, why is this a chase scene? He's supposed to be after us, but for whatever reason we chase him halfway across the city to a warehouse on the waterfront. I suppose it's possible he was leading us there to fight on his turf, but it's not like he was losing and came up with a new strategy. He just shoots Venom once and books it. Besides, as soon as we meet him at his warehouse, we just slap him a couple times and then leave. While the warehouse fight is a fun set piece, the chase to get there is just another section where you move along an all but preset path with no obstacles or variety. It's harder to do with Venom, but surely they could have created some kind of obstacle, like having bombs you have to avoid or something. Or just forego the chase scene for a cutscene and extend the warehouse fight. We don't have too much left of the game, catching back up with Peter as he's stopped on the street by none other than Silver Sablinova herself. Not only does she tranquilize him, but she kicks him in the head hard enough to knock him into the next panel. He wakes up in a car with her as they're crossing the Queensboro Bridge, and he breaks out the door. This is another one of the more creative fights in the game, because not only is Sable a formidable fighter, but Spidey is severely nerfed for this fight. For this section, not only is he fighting off a freaking horse trank, but he doesn't have his costume, or even his web shooters. If you get too close, she kicks your ass, and if you just do jumping attacks, she'll block most of them and punish you by hitting you with more tranquilizers. So, how does Peter handle such a dangerous situation? Well, he causes a massive car accident on the bridge with several people in danger in one way or... How did he even get up there? Surprisingly, Sable actually helps us with this, telling Peter that it isn't part of her job to get people hurt.
Aw, you're crazy with a heart of gold.
So we save all of the civilians that are in danger with only a little bit of racism.
If you're gonna be like that, I could just leave you hanging there.
No!
Go figure, she immediately shoots us with the darts again. Before she can do anything about it, though, who should drop in but Peter and Sable's mutual friend, Eddie Brock. He knocks out our boss fight and takes off, with Peter reluctantly following after them. I know my philosophy on this game is that the straight chases in this game aren't my favorite, but for whatever reason, I don't hate this one as much. It isn't as long, Peter has some good dialogue as you're chasing Venom, and the verticality of the chase gives it a little more difficulty than the others. So, this one gets a pass. Sue me. Eddie drops Sable off at an intersection at a random part of Manhattan, raising the question of why he even grabbed her in the first place. I guess to lure Peter away, but it feels unnecessary because why would he care where they fight? The fight goes about how you would expect, though it is fun seeing the moveset you've been using on Venom to mow down mercenaries, and some of Peter's villains, used against you again, with Venom even throwing cars at you this time. After winning the fight, Peter gives in to the fucking horse tranquilizers running through his system, passing out conveniently at the same time as Sable wakes back up. The game then hard cuts to the next mission with no free roam, as Eddie wakes up in his cell back at Trask's building. He hears screaming, unsure what's happening as his cell deactivates. Let the cutscene play out.
What's happening? Oh my god. I know.
You! Parker!
Do I need to hide who this is? I mean, he's a symbiote like Venom, but smaller and more violent. So as you start fighting Stiltman, it proves to be... What do you mean that's Carnage? I don't see it. Well, the fight with Carnage proves to be a little more difficult than some others, as if you stray too close, he can do some pretty big damage pretty quickly. He has a pretty similar fighting style to Venom, with claw attacks, tendril attacks, and a healing factor. Every once in a while, he does an AoE tendril move that you have to jump to avoid. It's telegraphed pretty obviously, both visually and with audio, and you have plenty of time to dodge. You follow the little red fucker through a few doors, leaving a lot of carnage, oh, I see it now, in your wake, not to mention a bunch of the building staff either impaled on tendrils or with their life essence absorbed. Collateral damage and all. The set piece here is fantastic. Fighting from Eddie's cell through a hallway into a giant room with pieces of a bigger Rhino suit than Peter fought earlier in the game in display cases across the room. After slamming Carnage's head into the floor a few more times, we cut to a few minutes before, where Adrian Toomes has Peter Parker locked into an operating table. He tells him about the microscopic particles of the black suit in his blood that we saw before, and how they're trying to recombine with the main form of Brock's suit. He injects Peter with a sample of the black suit that transforms him into the monster we as Venom were fighting. So with us all caught up, Venom pulls Carnage into his body, absorbing those particles and giving Brock full control. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said that there was another reason he could be getting those headaches when he was around Venom. But, like I said, it's not really explained all that well, so that's the best you get. He throws Peter out onto the ground and finally acquires the white spider on his chest that people recognize from the 616 comics, something that he unfortunately never really gets in the 1610 Ultimate Comics. After that, he just leaves. He's gotten what he wants from Peter and has other things to do. It's an interesting switch from what we've seen of Venom in other material. Seeing him go after Peter to complete the suit, and then not caring about him in the slightest is a fun shift from what we're used to. There is someone that he still has a score to settle with, though. Bolivar Trask has just been a presence in the background of this game so far. We've seen his face, and we know that the only thing he cares about in the slightest is money, even at the expense of people's lives, and Venom is after him. Peter gets there first, thankfully, and Bolivar gives him the dossier on what happened to his and Eddie's parents. Before Peter can ask any questions, like why this guy would even bother giving it to him, Venom crashes through a window to kill him. Spidey kicks Venom through a window, right out to the helipad that Trask is using to escape. Peter goes to follow him, but Silver Sable is waiting for him. She assures him that she's not out for him. Her contract with Trask has expired. As Venom approaches Trask's helicopter, that he doesn't know how to fly, Trask tries to fight him off with a machine gun. Like most billionaires, he has no idea what he's doing and manages to hit the oil barrels behind Spider-Man. Wait, why the hell are there oil barrels on the top floor of an industrial office building? No time to figure that out, as more and more of the roof is quickly being engulfed in flame. On top of that, Venom is gradually pushing Trask's helicopter off of the roof. But if we get too close, his focus changes to us instead. Now, I'm all for letting this Rockefeller wannabe tumble a few stories to teach him a lesson, but every time I try to let Eddie do his thing, I get this weird headache and memories of an old man bleeding out on the street, so I guess I should do something. When you have Venom's health down to between half and a quarter, fire consumes the whole roof, and we have to hold Eddie off in close quarters. It's hard to dodge between the giant toothy monster in front of us, the fire behind us, and the helicopter blades spinning above us. But with spit, grit, and a whole lot of web fluid, we put him down. Naturally, now that we've saved the day, S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up to clean up the mess. And Peter sits down to read the dossier Trask gave him. His father had regretted signing the contract to Trask, determined to fix things, starting with burning the suit. Eddie Brock Sr. had disagreed, and saved one sample without Parker Sr.'s knowledge. On the plane, he tested the suit and went on a rampage, causing the crash that got him, his best friend, and both of their wives killed. Peter and Eddie lost their families over a few handfuls of cash. Nick Fury tells Peter that he did well today, and that Eddie's gone. Oh, come on, you didn't expect Trask would get off that easy, did you? Eddie tracks him down at his cushy golf course prison and finishes the job.
Mr. Trask, I have been looking forward to this.
Eddie? I can't believe.
You know what I can't believe? I can't believe that after all the things you did, all the things you made me do, that after all of that, all you got was 3 years in a golf course prison.
You can't do anything to me in here. The guards.
They aren't nearly well enough.
I'm happy with that. I get the satisfaction of keeping Peter's moral ego clean, as well as the satisfaction of knowing that a worthless piece of human garbage got what he deserved. After everything, Peter sits with MJ at their usual meeting place. She reassures him that everything will work out, and Peter responds that Eddie is still out there. And
I don't know if I'm scared of him or for him.
that's the end of the game. It's not the longest game on Spidey's long list of releases, but it packs a lot into that short time. We get full stories for not just the web-slinger, but for one of his greatest enemies as well. Splitting the entirety of the game in half with each mission switching between the two characters was something that was new at the time, and hasn't really been replicated since. Maybe we could see something similar in the sequel to Insomniac's game? But for now, this game stands on its own. Every single mission is packed with so much detail and character that the short runtime of the game does nothing to take away from how good it is. This was the heyday of Ultimate Spider-Man, when Bendis still put out a banger with every issue, and this game is no different. Frankly, this game's story would translate perfectly into an actual issue of the comic. Okay, it should have translated perfectly. The dialogue of this game has frankly never been matched in another Spider-Man game.
Maybe this will knock crazy out of you.
I don't want to turn this into a comparison with Insomniac's game, but I honestly think it's the closest game to this in terms of quality. With Spider-Man 2, the environment was free and open, with tasks that made you feel like you were living a day in the webs, but the story was subpar, a secondary addition. With this game, you have just as much freedom in the environment, admittedly less of the minigames, but the story itself holds up to this day as a fantastic delving into the world of the Ultimate Comics. I can rant all day about this game being great, but what is it that makes it really stand out? Well, first, I should make something clear. The Ultimate Spider-Man comics are the single best set of comics to understand why I love Spider-Man. It's made such huge strides to inform the character in almost every interpretation to come afterwards. Peter Parker is an irresponsible person who has to work every day of his life to fight that irresponsibility to honor the memory of the man he respected most. In every universe, 616, 1610, the MCU, all of them, Peter Parker has proven that his determination to fulfill that obligation to his uncle is what makes him the best. Now take all of that, what it means to be Spider-Man, and force that character to rapidly learn those lessons over the course of literally a year, beating him down again and again, forcing him to choose between what's right and what's best for himself, constantly, until he literally dies for it. It's something that can never go to that extreme in the mainline Marvel universe, but they got the opportunity to show what would happen if you put that much responsibility onto a child. Sure, it's a child gifted with intelligence beyond what most people could ever dream of, not even mentioning the Stickum powers, but Peter Parker is still a kid. I'm going to take a moment to read an excerpt from one of my favorite issues of the Ultimate Run. This, fittingly enough, is the issue right after Peter defeated Venom the first time, something we saw happen in this game. That opening cutscene was issue 38, ending in what Peter, and by extension we the readers, assumed to be the death of Eddie Brock. This is how the next issue, issue 39, begins. We see Nick Fury at a restaurant, and he gets a call from S.H.I.E.L.D. that he's being followed. He tells them that he'll take care of it, and he goes into a nearby alley. He activates something on his watch, and Peter falls from the wall in front of him. Fury says it's a temporary genetic paralysis, and asks why Peter is following him around. Peter says he's been following Fury for an hour, which greatly impresses Fury. Fury asks again what Peter wants, and we get this exchange, which I'm just going to read out and pray I don't get a copyright strike. What do you want, Peter? I want you to take my powers away. I don't want them. I don't want to be Spider-Man and don't want my powers. And I know you can do it. I know you can inject me with something or spray me with something and I can go back to a normal life. I don't want to do this anymore. I want my life back to what it was before the spider bit me. I want this to stop. No. I'm an illegal genetic mutation. You said it yourself, I'm telling you. I don't want this. What happened, Peter? Listen to me. What happened, Peter? Listen to me. What happened, Peter? I got into a fight today. This guy, he turned himself into this thing. Something he couldn't control, and I was trying to stop him, and civilian? I don't even know what that means. Was this in Queens? Yes. A big black monstrosity type of thing? Yes. Carter? Yes, sir. You still in Queens? Yes, sir. I have an ID on that situation. Parker took care of it. He's right here. Oh, hey, kid. Nice job. No one got hurt. Good for you. Finish up quick and get out of there. So what happened? Where's the creep now? Did you kill him? I don't know. You don't know where he is, or you don't know if you killed him? I think I killed him. You think you killed him? Where's the body? It disappeared. Kid, there's not too many actual rules to this game of ours, but one of the big ones is, if there's no corpse, guy's alive. Best you could hope for is that you scared him into never trying any stupid crap like that again. But sadly, one of the other rules is that you probably didn't. Are you listening to me? I think I killed someone. I want you to do the right thing. I want you to... I heard you. I don't want this. Kid, you had a rough day. Everyone has them. And when you do what I do. You ask yourself, anybody's life better because of what I did today? If the answer's yes, then stop your whining. If not, well, do better tomorrow. What did I tell you the last time I saw you? You told me that I was going to be your prisoner because I was an illegal genetic mutation. No, I didn't. Oh, yes, you did. I thought you were smart, boy. I said my exact words. Enjoy your youth. You're too young to be this involved with the big boys. There'll be plenty of time and opportunity for you here later. What I said was, when you get of age, you'll be part of my team. I said you're in line to be part of one of the finest organizations this world has ever seen. You'll work alongside Tony Stark, Dr. Bruce Banner, Captain America. You're gonna be one of the greats, kid. One of the greats. Not dressed like that. But looking at you today, like this, your head's gonna pop off your body before you even make it to prom. You don't want to be Spider-Man anymore? Fine. What else you gonna do? Go work at Burger King? I have. You don't want to. Kid, you hit the lottery. People would kill to be you. Literally. The section goes on a little longer, but you get the gist. I wanted to bring this section up because Peter goes to someone he sees as an authority figure, frankly, a father figure, and he basically asks for help. How does Fury handle this? Well, to look on the bright side, he tells Peter that he'll be one of the best, and he'll help a lot of people. He'll get to work with the greatest heroes of his time, but to be realistic, that isn't what's happening. Peter thinks he just killed his old best friend. He thinks that once again, his Spider-Man life has gotten someone important to him hurt or killed, and he wants help. He wants it to stop. And this person, who may or may not have the ability to help him, to frankly save his life in the long term, tells him to get over it. Fury tells Peter that he needs to look on the bright side and keep being Spider-Man, something that has gotten people killed, has gotten Peter shot, and is frankly illegal to start with. So, if this section, in my opinion, is a great reason why Peter Parker shouldn't be Spider-Man, why did I take so much time to discuss it in a video about the tie-in video game that takes place months after this exchange? Because Nick Fury isn't important in this scene. I know that's a weird thing to say because he's the one giving the advice and telling Peter to move on. If these couple of pages hadn't been written, the story around it wouldn't change, and frankly, it's an unnecessary addition to a story that would have worked without it. But what it does do is it provides context to Peter Parker. This story takes place maybe 3 months after he was bitten by the spider. This scene shows us that this is a kid who doesn't know what he's doing, and that no one is helping him. One thing Fury says is absolutely true here. That part where he tells Peter that if he helped someone, it's a good day, and if he didn't, do better. I think this scene changed Peter's character, and it adjusts how he approaches things from this point forward. He's still a kid. He's still striving to make his uncle proud by living off of his mantra of responsibility. But now, he focuses on making sure that he always helps someone. That character trait, which is emphasized more than anything in that scene, is what makes Spider-Man. And 1610 Peter learned it 3 months into the job. It's why Ultimate Spider-Man is everything you ever need to know about the character in any universe, because he is the truest version of that character. So let me backtrack a little bit to what I was saying before. This version of the character informed almost every version going forward, certainly every version in high school. Take, for example, Spectacular Spider-Man, the Mark Webb movies, and Ultimate Spider-Man TV show, to name a few. All of them have some level of focus on Peter Parker in high school, and in every single one, he's quick to his temper, and almost gives up on his view of responsibility, before he's brought back to help at least one person. He already knows the great power, great responsibility thing, but it's overwhelming. It's too much for a kid his age to handle, and in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, it's gotten too many people he cares about killed. It almost breaks him, but he comes back because he knows he can help at least one more person. Even the MCU does this to an extent, namely in No Way Home. He may not hang up the costume, but Aunt May's death pushed him to do something that would be the end of Spider-Man, killing the Goblin. The difference is, the one person that he's trying to save there is himself. To make a long story short, the way Bendis wrote Ultimate Spider-Man forever changed what the character means, not just on page, but to the people reading. This comic is what made Spider-Man truly the symbol of hope and responsibility that he is today, more than anything else. Yeah, I'll admit, this game isn't groundbreaking in its story. He fights a rogues gallery of bad guys and gives us some good quips along the way, but just the fact that it can fit so seamlessly into everything I just spent the last few minutes talking about is proof that this game's story is beyond amazing. It's ultimate. Which is why I have to give this game's story a 10 out of 10. Now, this is the first time I've had to do this, but I found that my super long videos don't tend to resonate with you guys as well, so I have decided to make this a two-parter. Part 2 is unfortunately going to take a little bit of time to finish up, as we do have Pokemon Scarlet and Violet coming out tomorrow as of the time I'm recording this update, hence the new shirt. Originally it was planned to come up the day after, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. So we'll be getting this part out, planned to be on this Saturday, which would be... I didn't script this, I'm sorry. Plan is to have this episode out Saturday the 19th, and I'll be recording Pokemon this weekend. That is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So if you guys like Pokemon content, keep an eye out. We'll have that out on probably the week after. Again, I didn't script this, so that would be planned to start Pokemon content between the 26th and the 28th is when we should start uploading that game. But for part 2 of this video, if all you care about is the Spider-Man stuff, unfortunately, it's gonna take me a little bit to get that guy out because I still haven't recorded the audio for the script, and editing this part alone took me like a month and a half. So it'll be out as soon as I can, I promise. Give me at least a couple weeks. So, I'm gonna put it back to the other me in the past. Bye. For now, I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of the story. These videos take me super long to put out, and I know it's been 2.5 months? Jeez, I need to get better at this. Well, at least we only have 9 more games. Holy sh... Well, at this point, the Year of the Spider is turning into the Biennium of the Spider. Which is just another reason why this video is being split into 2 parts. If you enjoy what I do and want to see more, the most that I can say is just share the video. I was so happy with how the playthrough did, amassing over 1,000 views across the whole series, almost half of that coming from part 4. So I hope that you guys do appreciate the effort I put into this video. So since part 1 covered the story and what it means to me, part 2 will probably be a little shorter, covering the combat, traversal, audio-visual, and concluding my overall thoughts on the game. That said, thanks for putting up with me, and I hope to see you guys for part 2. Be gay, do crimes, and we'll see you next time. Whip, whip.